साइड देख, आज इफेक्ट कुछ नहीं लगाना पड़ा, उसको लगाए रहते ना कल।
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So you can hear me? Good. So how was your week? So did you get some, I mean, you had one class off. So did you get time to go over the slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So by the way, you all have submitted your your assignment?
Yes, sir.
Let me just,
Yes, sir.
let me just quickly verify it. Okay.
Yes,
So-
sir. I have requested you, but I have submitted the assignment already.
Yeah, okay. So I am going to call out 4 names. I think one of you have kind of sent me, but Monmotho Roy, who is this? Hello? Is Monmotho Roy here? No. Okay. Shubimoy Hatai, is he here? Shubimoy Hatai? Ayush Chauhan, are you here? Ayush Chauhan? No.
Sir, can you repeat what are you asking? I have just joined.
So, no, I didn't call out your name. I mean, like, there are 4 people who have not submitted their assignments. And so that's what I was like, seeing. Yeah. These are the 3 people who have not submitted their assignments. So I was just trying to understand whether, yeah, I mean, what's the status? And so Lakshmi Kanta Shao, so I think you have sent me your assignment in email, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So is it, I mean, you don't have access to laptop, you told, right?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
can
sir.
you upload it in Classroom? Is it possible? Have you managed to register yourself in Classroom? Hello. Hello. You are muted. Can you unmute yourself? Hello. Okay, I cannot hear you. Hello. Rest of you can hear me, right? Hello. Am I audible? Hello. Am I audible? Oh God.
Yes, sir. Now
Yes,
you are
sir.
audible.
Now you are.
Oh, now I am. I was not audible earlier. Is it? Okay. So Lakshmikant, how? So can you submit your assignment in Classroom?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you can do that, that will be good. Okay. Just
Okay,
upload it
okay.
in Classroom so that I will have the same platform where I have all the assignments, and I will try to go over your assignments in the next 1 week or so.
Okay, sir.
Okay, good. So, right. So before I start, I want to, like as usual, I want to just see what is the situation of all of you. So there was this lecture notes 6A and 6B that was uploaded, and there was also the 5B from the previous slide, which many people have not looked at. So I'm going to launch a poll which will help me understand, I mean, whether you have actually read it or not. Hello. One. Good. I'm actually really happy that you, I mean, almost all of you have told me that you have gone over it completely. Uh, some of you have told that you have gone over it only partially, but it's a very small number. And yeah, good. So while so yeah, please tell me now any doubts, any questions that you have on this stuff.
Sir, in that for all integers then.
Sorry.
So there was a proof or disproof that 2 to the power 2 to the power n plus 1 is a prime. And at the end it was said that finding counter example may be hard. But is it, I mean, I somehow think that I did not get that part clearly.
So
Is
can you
it,
just tell me at in which slide? It was on the slides, is it?
yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. It was in slide 6B most probably.
Slide 6. Yes.
But
Sir, it is
most
in
probably
6A, the
6A.
fourth last slide.
6A at the last.
Fourth last slide of 6A.
6A, fourth last slide. Let me just open. No, why today my thing is very slow. 6A, fourth last slide. You told. Right. Yeah. No, so I just kind of, I mean, this was just an example to kind of show you that actually finding a counterexample can be hard. Okay, So the question was that can you prove or disprove whether all positive numbers, which is of the form 2 to the power n plus 1 is a prime? And actually it is not. And the answer is actually the n equals to 5. This number, whatever the number comes out to be, is a pretty huge number. And but that is not a prime, it turns out. That is actually a product of two integers.
And equal to 6 also, sir.
At n equals to 6 also? Okay, well, maybe. Okay. So this, all I wanted to kind of show is that, I mean, coming up with a counter example can be, I mean, can be very complicated. And there are lots of reasons why, therefore, I mean, giving a counter example to some statement is actually very hard.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that is basically all that I wanted to kind of convey from here. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hi.
Sir, this is Neeraj. Slide 6B, 9th slide.
Slide 6B, 9th slide.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, tell me.
Sir, how these two statements are equivalent? Like we are restating the problem.
Which one? The problem. So can you just read out what you have? Because I mean, sometimes, I mean, I'm looking at the slide number.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, we have a problem for all n greater than equals to 1. Prove that.
Yeah. No, so this is just a restatement. That is no doubt true. Okay. All that I'm saying is that, so I have replaced that this the statement or the proposition you can think of that that 11 divides 2 to the power n minus 1 as a statement which is quantified by a parameter n. Right, so pk, let pk be the statement that says that 11 divides p to the power k plus 1. And all I'm saying is that, so all that you have to prove is that for all k greater than or equal to 1, pk is true. So this is nothing, this is just a restatement of whatever is there. But you need to kind of restate a statement like this to apply induction. So now we know what the induction hypothesis is. The important hypothesis is
Sir,
yeah.
Sir, that's what I'm not getting, that how we have restated it. Like we have to think of for it, or
Yes,
it just.
yes, we have to think of for it. Okay, there is no
okay,
particular. I mean, in fact, right now, whatever induction results.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. If you share the screen, then it will be easy to understand for us which question he is talking.
Okay, sure. Yeah, can you see?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So basically, so this statement. I mean, right now, whatever example that you are seeing, right, is it has only one parameter basically, right, which is basically n. That's it, or something like that. So in some sense, you can see that this statement that you have to prove is the statement which we will induct on. I mean, we will induct on k, but this will be the induction hypothesis. This pk will be the induction hypothesis. Pk will help me to create the induction hypothesis, which is that pk is true. Okay, but at times, just one second. At times there will be problems. I mean, maybe we'll see it just today only, when it is not very clear what the induction hypothesis is. Where do you induct on? Okay, so a good example, for example, maybe the next statement, like this statement, right? Now this statement has a number of, already has a number of stuffs that are unknown, right? Like for example, it says that a1 to an are real numbers. Okay, there is n. so you can of course have the n, you can parameterize by n, or you can parameterize by maybe the AIs or something. So it's not very clear what to, how to restructure it. So one way of doing it is possibly how it has been done here, that which says that you kind of parameterize by this n. This pk is, this statement is true. Now that is, I mean, in fact, there are other ways of doing it. Okay, for example, let's say, okay, maybe you guys are confused about how will you induct on a real number or something, but think of this, what happens if a1 to an are integers, positive integers? Then can you induct on something else? Possibly, you can induct on the maybe ak or something like that.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, sorry to interrupt. I want to just ask one question. I know this induction process, but I want to know that what is the intuition behind it? Like when we prove it for the k and when we prove it for the k plus 1.
Oh, why is it
like
true?
I'm not getting the intuition.
I mean, so when we prove for k and when we prove for k plus 2, why does things becomes true? Is it? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Good. So maybe I have something here. Okay. So I mean, this is in this section 7 that that we kind of, I will be uploading today, lecture 7a. But basically, let me just jump here, and maybe it has been given here. Okay. So was
Yes.
this thing given earlier in this section?
Yeah,
Yes, sir, I have seen. Yes.
and it's very, very nice that you have posted it.
I don't get you. So was this thing in the section 6 that was there? I have to see.
Yes, sir, it was
Yes,
there.
sir.
It was there. Okay. Right. So this is okay. So now till now, remember that we had to prove A implies B. Right. So that is the basic framework in which we work. Okay. But now this A is something that can be composed of a infinite class of objects. Right. So it is not so just case studies and all doesn't help. Okay. So we have to kind of go for something else. And this is what is called the induction axiom of induction. So this is actually a thing that you can think of is something that we don't have a proof of. Okay. Philosophers have thought about it, argued about it, and discussed and told that, okay, this is an axiom that we can think of. That if you can prove something if you can prove this statement, that if you have a starting state and you prove that for all k, pk, if pk is true, then pk plus 1 is true, then that would mean that you end up proving that for all k, pk is true.
Sir, after P1, it should be AND or OR. That sign is.
Oh, this is AND. This has to be AND. Right. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks for
But in slide number 5 also, I think it should be changed to AND.
Oh, very much possible. Okay, sorry. This is a typo there. Thanks for
Okay.
pointing out. I've been using this slide for quite some time, but I never realized.
Sir, why is it important to prove it true for p for n equal to 1? Like, even if we don't do it, we just prove it for k and then k equal to.
Very good. If you prove for that k is true, then pk plus 1 is true. Okay, then you have no starting point. Okay, in fact, what I will, so you don't have any starting points. It might very well be true that it is not true for anything. Okay, so maybe I will just use my slides here. Yeah, so say we just have this following thing, right? That pk implies pk plus 1 for all k. Then this implies for all k, pk is true. Right? You are saying this statement. Now this statement has a problem that there is no base. Okay, so what might very well happen that, so okay, this is a valid statement. Okay, for all k, pk is false. This is a possibility. Okay, what if, note that here, if you remember, we had discussed that if a false statement can imply anything, so therefore a false statement can imply anything. So pk is false, therefore pk plus 1 is false. Yeah, of course it is true. This statement is also can be provable. But
Sir,
that doesn't mean this is true, right?
Sir,
Yeah.
so but if for all k pk is false, then then that would imply that p1 is also false. But it was p1 and
Exactly. So that is the reason. So that is the reason you need to prove p1 is true.
So we are actually starting from P1 and giving a generalized statement that Pk is true, then it implies Pk plus 1 is true. So for every k, it would be true.
Exactly.
Yes, sir. That will cover the whole universe of disclosure. Like if we start from there, and so we can say that for k greater than equal to also it will be true.
Exactly. So, but so what I wanted to tell you is that, see, this is in this case, okay. If this is the case, then you can prove this following statement. Okay, this is also true. Okay, so which will imply that for all k, pk is true, which is a contradiction, right? Look at this too. So this is what we call as a contradiction, right? We started with everything false. So where did it go wrong? It went wrong because we need what we call as the base case. And that's why this fact, that's why, so we need the base case. And this is important. I will give you examples of wrong proofs of induction where you miss a base case and everything goes wrong. Okay, so that's why you need that. Not only you need that for all k, pk implies pk plus 1, you also need that p1 is true. And this would imply for all k, pk.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, one problem is there. Sir, suppose the base case is true,
yeah,
but for all k, the second part is false. So due to the AND operation, the first part is false. So how can we?
No, so this basically means that what? So this is an equivalence, right? I mean, then the whole statement is a false statement, right?
Yes, sir, and false can imply true.
So this is not something that you are proving. So be a bit careful here. This is not what you are proving. This whole thing is an axiom. This whole thing is an axiom. This is something that we don't prove or something. This is a rule.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, false implies anything, that's true, but also a true thing implies this thing. Right? So if you can prove this whole stuff here, then that would imply this quantity. So this is the proof technique, axiom for proof technique. Okay. So this is you. Okay, so you are not trying to prove this thing. An axiom is something that cannot be proven. Okay, axioms are rules that has been kind of debated on, and you can discuss and you can say that no, I don't believe this axiom. I don't like this axiom. In fact, there is a whole area of mathematics where they don't believe the induction axiom. Okay, and then what all can be proved and all those kinds of stuff are argued. But for all our practical purposes, we will assume induction axiom. Okay. Is this clear? So if this is clear, I should kind of point out what your friend was saying just now. That see, this is the starting axiom, okay? So now actually, you can, so let's call this one as the basic axiom. Basic induction axiom. Okay, so think of this is an universal truth that someone has given us. From this form, you can actually produce various versions. Like there is this version, another version, let me write down. Okay, and this is a very simple version that is there. That if PR is true, and for all K bigger than equal to R, PK implies PR, PK plus 1, then for all K bigger than R, PK is true. So that means I don't have to have the base at 0 or at 1. I can have the base case anywhere else. Okay. So this is another version. This is version 2 of this one. And you can actually prove. Okay. So this is something that you can try to prove. Okay. That show that. So maybe this one, I call this one as version 1. Version 1 and version 2 are basically same. So these two statements are basically same statements. Okay. So not only that, yeah. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, again, I want to come on that point, that version 1, like the one of student, just he was saying that if the left side was false, then everything will be true. Now, I'm also in the dilemma, like not getting the intuition again. Like suppose if P1 and for all K PK, this both things are false. If these are false, then the left side thing that is in the bracket will be true. Now, then true implies that false, and this whole thing will be false. So
no, whole thing is not false. See, this is a statement. Okay, so this says that. Okay, think of this way. It says that if you prove this statement, if you prove this part, then you will get this part. Okay. If this statement is true, then this is true. Now, yes, a false statement implies a true statement. So if you prove this statement and this is false, okay?
Okay.
I mean, so if this is, so see this whole statement as a whole, what does it mean? A implies B. Okay, so this is not A implies B. Yeah, I mean, think of it as A implies B only, right? So this is A implies B, and the question is that is this statement true? Right? So in this, one way of saying is that if A is, so you should not think that, okay, if A is false, then is B is true? Yes, it is true, because a false statement always implies anything. The question is that if A is true, then B must be true.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir. Yes. Right.
If A is true, then B must be true. Okay, so as a whole, look at this whole statement as a whole. Okay, this whole statement as a whole, if you want to discuss, is this philosophically correct? First of all, this statement implies this, okay? Of course, if this is false, then this is true, is always true. False implies true, yeah. The only question is that if this is false, sorry, if this is true, can it be that this is false? The axiom says that no, that cannot be happen. That cannot happen.
Okay.
Okay. Now this is the whole statement as a whole.
Okay. Means we are not worried about that thing, that if the left side become false. But
Yes.
what we are worrying that if A is true, then what about B?
Then what about B? So if A is true, then B must be true.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is what it
B
says.
must be.
Okay. So all you need to show is this is true. If you properly prove this statement, then you have already proven that this is true.
Obviously, right thing will be true. Yes, sir.
So it's very much possible that this might not be true, right? I mean, think of it, induction. Not that this statement is true means that there must be an induction hypothesis, induction proof. Correct? So it's very much possible that induction wise you cannot prove something, but the actual statement is true. Right? All it says that if you do the induction hypothesis technique, then whatever you get must be true. That's all that it says.
Yes, I got that.
What about the rest of you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good that you guys are asking these questions. These are like very important from the logic point of view. These statements are exactly the where, yeah, I mean, it is important for us to understand these questions. By the way, I mean, yeah, so let me just going to go over some of the other versions that are there, and all the versions are similar, okay? So there's the version 3. Say I can actually produce infinite number of versions. Say I have this version. So you have proved PR is true, and okay, okay, sorry, and PR plus 1 is true, and for all k bigger than or equal to R, Pk implies Pk plus 2. Then this implies that for all k bigger than or equal to R, Pk is true. This is another version that one can apply. Meaning you have two base cases, R and R plus 1. And you prove that if something is true, then you can jump one step and prove it. Okay. Now, you might say that, okay, so there you can of course produce a lot of versions there. Of course, there are another version, and this is a version that you possibly have also, all of us, you have seen it at some point of time. Okay, so PR is true, and if for all k greater than or equal to R, PR to Pk is true, implies Pk plus 1 is true. Then for all k greater than R, Pk is true. Note that at the right hand side everything becomes same. What we want to prove everywhere is same. This left hand side is what is changing. And this is sometimes is what you might have called it as the strong induction. Okay, so I claim that version 1, version 2, version 3, all of them are basically same. So you can deduce one from the other. You can deduce all from the other. So it is only one axiom that was there that we assume. The rest of it you can produce from the others. Okay, try to prove them that how all the versions are similar.
Sir,
yeah.
Sir, can you just repeat the last line that you have said? Just got the disconnected.
Oh, so I just told that all the 4 versions, or all the versions that we have written here, they're all similar to each other. So they are all equivalent to each other. So we have only one axiom. You can start with any one of them as an axiom. Either the version 4 as an axiom or version 1 as an axiom, doesn't matter. And then rest of them are all equivalent statements. Okay. Now you can keep on producing versions one after another. Like say here it was skipping with 2. I can have skip with 3. I can skip do something, and so on. Okay, but you should remember one thing. All that you want to do is that you have this set here, right? You have everything is done on the real line, on the integers. The 0, -1, -2, and so on. 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now your job is always, you have a set S of the natural on the integers for which you want to prove it, right? There is a set of S such that for all I in S, P of I is true. So this is the kind of statement that we want to do. This can be all the real numbers on this side on bigger than 0, or sorry, all the natural numbers bigger than 0, or all the natural numbers bigger than 5, or all the even numbers bigger than 8, or something like that, all prime numbers, or so on and so forth. So your job is always to come up with a version. Okay, you can choose a version. Okay, so find a version. You don't have to remember all of this, all the versions, by the way, because you can produce one version by yourself. Find a version such that all the points in S are covered. Say, for example, I want to say prove it for this statement, this one, right? All that was done was that, okay, I prove for P2 and P3, then P2 implies P4. Okay. P3 implies P5. P4 implies P6. P5 implies P7. And you can convince yourself that by doing so, all numbers more than 2 will be covered. Okay. So you can start with any version, whatever you want. Any version that whatever you want, and as long as you cover all these points. Okay. So there is nothing called oh, you have to go from smaller to larger, or one after another, or something like that. Okay. So here I should kind of point out here that if I go back to the problems that was discussed, where is it gone? For this problem, this is the famous AMGM inequality, right? All of you have used at some point of time or other. Now, how many of you have seen the proof of this?
Sir, I've seen, but I don't remember it now.
Okay. What about the rest of you? You have all used the AMGM inequality at some level, I'm sure. Now the proof of this one, okay, there are multiple proofs of this one, no doubt about that. But there is one proof of this using induction. And that proof uses a very interesting kind of version of this induction. Okay. So I can explain you quickly what is the version, and I will let you guys go back and think and try to prove it. Okay. And then the proof will be uploaded and in the slides anyways. So here is it. Okay. So I want to prove what? I want to prove that for all n, the natural numbers, and a1 to an greater than 0, a1 the arithmetic mean is bigger than the geometric mean, right? a1 to an the power 1 by. Now, this is, let me first explain you what are the few steps that are required to proving it. And then I will go about explaining it in a slightly bit more details possibly. First things first is that, okay, you prove for n equals to 2. Now this will be the best case. Okay, I am not going to prove it. I will let you go and prove it. The next is that you prove it for all powers of 2 of all n equals to 2 to the power some k. Meaning proof for 2, 4, 8, 16 and so on and so forth. How do you do it? The way to do it is actually that prove it that for all k, okay, now of course this whole thing, you remember that this is something that I called it as pk, right? With n equals to k, or k equals to n, then I call this one as pk, this statement, right? So for all k, pk is true implies that p of 2k is true. This is what you end up proving. Note that what happens here. So I claim this statement, okay, that if p2 is true and for all k, pk is true implies p2k is true. What does it imply? Means that for all, so this is not k, L, but this I can write it as for all L and k equals to 2 to the power L, pk is true. Okay. Now, why is this one true? Now, this is something you can see it here very nicely. So, I have a 0 over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, I know 2 is true. This is what this gives us. And 2 is true implies 4 is true. 4 is true implies 8 is true. 8 is true implies 16 is true, and so on. So this statement is, you can think of another version if you want. I can define it as a new version, version 5. Okay, but because all that I want is to ensure that for all powers of 2, this is true. Right. Now, what do you do? Now the third thing that you prove is interesting. You prove that for all k, pk is true implies, now you might be a bit shocked over here what I'm going to write here, pk minus 1 is true. Prove this. So in other words, say for example, you can prove that, so okay, so if P8 is true, then prove P7 is true. Prove P7 is true. And then you also prove P6 is true. So in other words, say I have in this real line, I have got all the 2, 4, 8 and so on. But since I have 4 is true, so I can prove 3 is true. Okay, since I know 8 is true, therefore I can prove 7, 6, 5 is true, and so on. And once you can prove these 3 steps, what happens? Let's write down a very big expression over here. What did we do? We did P2 is true, and for all k, Pk is true implies P2k is true, and for all k, Pk is true implies Pk minus 1 is true. And if once we prove all of them together, you have to convince yourself that this will end up completely covering all the natural numbers. So this should imply that for all k, Pk is true. And you can think of this one to be a version 8 if you want. Okay, so this is sometimes called the backward induction. But you see that there is no unique induction as such. Yeah, all the inductions are equivalent to each other as a statement. They all have come from the same axiom. But for a problem, your job is to come up with an version so that you can cover all of them. Now you might say that, okay, how do I know that this is the correct version? Good. So technically, you should be able to prove that this version is same as that version. This version is same as version 1. If you want, you can take it as a challenge to prove that version 8 is same as version 1. And so that you can, for once and for all, get a confidence that, oh, you know how to produce all the, different versions as and when you need. But as a thumb rule,
can you show the version 1 again?
The version 1 is the most basic one. Is this one. Version 1 is the most basic one. P1 is true, Pk implies Pk plus 1. That means for all k, Pk is true.
Sir, can we use induction again to prove that the version is correct?
You can. If you want, you can use that. Because you can use the same axiom a couple of times more. That's perfectly fine. So think of this statement.
Sir, we can also.
Yeah.
Sir, we can also use the principles of the first order logic to prove that these two are equivalent.
That's what I meant. That that's the equivalent thing. Yeah. All those principles of first order logic is exactly what. Yeah.
So like we can prove that version 8 is correct for n equal to 1. Then it is true for n equal to k.
You can do that. You can do that. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hello.
Sir, in version 8, we are taking P2 as the base case, right?
Yes.
So,
why not P1? Okay, P1 here is a special thing, right? P1, you can think of P1. Let's put P equals to 1. That I didn't state it anywhere, but if you want, you can write it P1.
So we can take any number as base case.
If you can prove it, you can take any number as base case, whatever you want, whatever you can prove. Like here, what is P minus 1? Doesn't make any sense, right?
No, sir, any number greater than equal to 1.
Yes, if you prove it for a particular base case, then everything is true accordingly. Right? But yeah, here you can choose any one of them as a base case and it will be kind of.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir?
Sir, actually, suppose we take P2 as the base case. Now, suppose k equals to 2 implies Pk minus 1, right?
Yeah.
So P1 will be true in that case. So
yes.
Isn't it contradicting our own statement? Like P2 should not be a base case.
Doesn't matter what is the base case or not. You can think of it like, at the end of the day, this whole statement proves this statement. Okay, maybe I have not written it here. So P greater than equal to 1, say.
Sir,
in left side also we should write that, like.
Yeah, we should.
K greater than equal to 1.
This one is true. I think maybe greater than equal to 0 is good enough. Let's say.
Sir, I think k should be greater than equal to 2. Otherwise.
Yes, sir. In
sir, greater than equal to.
Pk.
Sir, greater than equal to 0 will not work because. P1 implies P minus 1.
No, yeah, of course. So this has
P naught implies P minus.
This will be k greater than or equal to 1. Okay, maybe 2. Let's put 2 for just for
Yeah,
the
greater than or equal to 2.
yeah, yeah.
2.
Yeah.
Sir, here, so once we have proved for k,
Sorry, I lost you in the middle. Can you just repeat? Omkar, can you repeat?
yes, sir. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible now.
So first we said that first we proved that pk implies p2k, and then we say then we want to show that pk implies pk minus 1. So that we can show that starting from 8, then it will p7 will hold, p6 will hold, and so on and so forth.
Right.
But so then we could also have started with p4 and then said that p5 is true, p6 is true. So
I don't know how to prove it. I don't know how to prove it. Okay, good. You might say that why not? Why didn't I follow the version 1?
Yes, so that's
Yeah, because I don't know how to prove. I just don't know how to prove. So here, I don't know how to prove, and you can try it out yourself. Okay, that pi or pk implies pk plus 1 directly. I don't know. Okay.
Yes, sir, it's very difficult.
Yeah. That's why you could not prove it this way.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and maybe many of you have tried it already. So you're
yes.
Yeah. So this is actually a beauty of induction. Induction, you can apply induction in various ways. It doesn't have to be in only going from small to large or something like that. Your idea should be that you have a set that you want to fill up. How you fill up is almost up to you. But you should ensure that, so another way of proving it is that you can think of that for all number in the set that you want to fill up, you can give a finite sized proof. This is very important. So for example, here you can give me, what about I equals to 102? Yeah, I know how to prove it. How? I'll first prove 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, then 32, then 64, then 128. Okay, then whatever 7 steps or 6 steps that I have done. And 128 implies 127, 127, and so on, and go down for another 26 steps or something. And I prove 102. So I can give you a finite number of steps through which I can prove 102. So this is all that you have to ensure, that any set, any fixed number I in the set that you want to cover should be provable using a finite number of steps.
Sir, in version 8, sir, here these brackets, we are assuming it to be true, or we have to prove this to be true?
No, you have to prove this to be true.
And sir, we haven't yet proved it.
No, I leave it to you to prove it.
Yes, sir, because that also may be difficult.
That is not that difficult, actually speaking. Once somebody points it out to you, I mean, anyway, so try it out. The proof will be uploaded in the web page today. Okay, but they are not that hard. Once somebody points out that this is what you have to prove, I think you will be able to prove it.
Proving pk implies pk minus 1.
Yes, even that one also you can do it. Okay. I'm sure you have not tried it out yet. That's why, because you always have tried out this side, which is the harder part to prove. This is a much harder thing to prove, and I don't even know how to prove it. But this one is actually not that hard. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions about this induction part? So the things to take is that there are one induction hypothesis or one induction axiom, and from which you can produce a collection of induction versions. And you feel free to use them. You choose the induction version that works for you. Not all induction versions will work for everybody or every problem rather. Okay. And the goal always is to cover the set that you want to cover. Fine. Now there are some things that I want to really emphasize, and this is something that I don't know whether you guys will understand it right away or you will take some time to figure out. But first one is very easy, okay? And this is important. The base case is important. As somebody pointed out, and you should not just end up like even here. It is very important that to prove P2. Just having this part is not good enough. And many times even base case can be the hardest one to solve. Many times base case can be completely false. And you end up proving something completely arbitrary. Now, second thing is that, okay, now this is even particularly true when we apply induction on objects. Okay, now what do I mean by induction on objects? Okay, whatever it is, just think of this way that our goal is to prove, say I apply the simplest version. Say I have the version 1, okay, which is basically P1 is true, and for all k, Pk implies Pk plus 1, then this implies that for all k, Pk. Now here, how do you prove this statement? How do you prove this thing? Okay, so how to prove this? So I have a problem, right? Now I need to prove this particular sentence or statement, right? How do you prove it? Now this is something I'm going to say. You will not understand it unless you work on the combinatorial problems, because in the number theory problems, this problem doesn't appear. But the idea is that you have to prove. The goal is to prove Pk plus 1. Okay, so you should start with an instance. Okay, so let X be an instance of Pk plus 1. By the way, this is also true for this thing case also here. Believe me. Because here, what is an instance of Pk? What is an instance of Pk in the AMGM's inequality? The instance is a set of numbers, A1 to AK, right?
Finite.
Sorry?
Sir, it will be finite set, right?
Yeah, it's finite, the set of size K. So an instance of Pk, say in the case of in AMGM, what is it? It is that somebody has given you A1 to AK. Somebody has given you A1 to AK. And this, you don't have control over A1 to AK, believe me. You have no control over A1 to AK. You have only control over this number K, that's it. You have fixed K, or instead of the K plus 1 rather, right? You have been given A1 to AK, A1 to AK plus 1. Whether the A1s are, and all that you can say is that they are all positive, that's it. Whether they are all equal or whether something is bigger or smaller is not up to your hand, right? So an instance is this set. And given an instance of this thing, you want to prove, okay, to prove Pk plus 1 is true for X. You of course let A1 to AK plus 1 be an instance of Pk plus 1, right? And then you end up proving for X. Now here it is. This is where you use the assuming Pk. Assuming Pk. Now Pk for what? For any number. Pk basically says for anything, for any instance. Okay, so this is very important. You don't start with an instance of Pk and then produce an instance of Pk plus 1. Instead, you try to use an instance of Pk plus 1. I mean, start with an instance of Pk plus 1 and then try to prove it assuming Pk. I want you guys to really solve this problem, this thing. So I will be uploading these two videos today, 7a and 7b, not videos, slides. 7a is very simple, looks at various versions of the induction hypothesis. 7b basically is dedicated to this AMGM inequality. I would prefer if you don't look at the 7b to start with. Instead, try to solve it yourself. You have seen this, how it has to be done. It has to go through this version 8, right? And now, but you have to kind of prove it, and this proving basically means that when you are trying to solve this particular thing, okay, you have been given, what does it mean? How do you prove this statement? Then say that, okay, let X be an instance of P2K. What does it mean? I have some positive numbers A1 to A2K. And I want to apply, okay, I want to apply or use the Pk statement to solve for that particular instance. Similarly here, you start from a instance of Pk minus 1 and then you use Pk somehow.
Sir.
Yeah.
One question is there.
Yeah.
So, sir, can we prove beyond the basis? Like here in version 8, the basis is P2. So can we also prove P1?
Yeah,
like,
see, at the end of the day, your version might end up proving something more than what it was asked for. That is perfectly fine. Your induction's goal should just be to at least cover the whole set that you wanted to cover. Some other sets getting covered is not a problem. Okay, so maybe this statement is true for even P0.
But I have
But no, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about. For right?
Okay.
This is what matters, and this covers maybe. And you are right. Maybe I could have, instead of k equals to 1 greater than 1, I can write k is greater than or equal to 0. Yeah, it also have been true. But
in the base case, we could have also considered, like, instead of P2, we have considered P5 or P10.
You could have in this particular setting, you could have done. That is true.
Okay, sir.
That is very true. You could have gone for. Yeah, actually, when you just now when I was telling you, I realized that for here, this is a bit more complicated than this. This in this particular setting here, okay, the proof you cannot prove PK implies P2K that easily. You have to use that P2 and PK implies P2K. Okay, I mean the proof will report that thing. I mean, yeah, try to solve it and you will see what I mean here. Okay, it's like from P4, you cannot go directly to P8 unless you have a proof of P2. Yeah, somebody else wanted to say something, ask something.
Sir, just I want to ask that that just you have shown about that instance. So I'm not getting that. Can you again point out it like?
Yeah. So for example, how do you? So let's think of this in this AMDM thing. Okay. I have PK implies PK minus 1. Okay. I want to prove this statement. Okay. How can I solve it? Okay. There are two ways of solving it. One solution. Okay. Consider A1 to AK greater than 0. Okay. And I have, and then I know that A1 plus something to AK by K is bigger than A1 till AK to the power 1 by K. And from this I do some kind of crazy stuff and then I produce A1 prime till AK prime, K minus 1 prime by K minus 1 is bigger than A1 prime till AK minus 1 prime to the power 1 by K minus 1. So I have started with an instance of PK and I've ended up proving this thing for an instance of PK minus 1. Okay, so this is a statement in which let me write down in English. I started with an instance of PK and proved PK minus 1 for some instance. Now this way is wrong. Okay. Because two things. First of all, it is very hard to convince in this thing that why does, I mean, you are supposed to, what is it that you are supposed to do? So we had to prove PK plus 1 for all instances. Sorry, PK minus 1 for all instances. Now, you somehow then have to argue that by starting with an instance of PK, you have managed to kind of cover all possible instances of PK minus 1. That can be very hard to do at times. So this is, I would say that you don't go in this direction at all. I mean, you will understand it better when we do the combinatorial induction. Okay, but best thing is that just accept my saying and don't go in this direction at all. Instead, the right way, okay, the right way is what? So I want to prove it for all K, PK implies PK minus 1. You start with let A1 to AK minus 1 greater than 0. okay, and then you want to show what? Want to show that a1 to ak minus 1, this numbers should satisfy the AMD-NAM inequality. And then you do some kind of stuffs maybe, and in the meantime maybe you have got, so this, if this one, if this one, if this one, and then you produce some kind of a k different stuffs. This might be different ones, okay, is more than a1 to a1 prime till ak prime to 1 by k. And then this is true because of pk. So you, and therefore since this implies this, we have this term. So what did we do? In hindsight, we started with an instance of p k minus 1, and then reduced it to some instance of pk and used induction hypothesis. So on that instance. Okay, so see what happens. We started from something and we proved. This is important. Just 1 second. Hello. ও হ্যাঁ, আমি একটু পরে পড়বো, ক্লাস চলছে আমার, আমি ক্লাস চলছে আমার। Hello. Hello, can you hear me or see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so good. So this is basically what we did, okay, and this is what I want you guys to do also. That start from what you want to show. This is very important, okay, and prove that thing. Don't start from an instance of what you assume, but start from an instance of what you have to prove, and then prove that using all possible assumptions that you have made. Now this is very, very important. I mean, this is extremely important, and this is the place where most students, in my opinion, make a mistake. Okay, now I am sure that some of you will still argue that I can still maybe go in this direction and convince you that I have covered every base and all. I would rather say that I don't want you to even go in this direction. So I'm telling you in the beginning in this course only that from now on I should not see an induction that goes in this direction. An induction, whenever you have to prove an induction step, inductive step, you start from an instance what you can show, or what you want to show, and then use whatever you are assuming to prove it. Believe me, I mean, there's a lot of mistakes that happens for here. So it's very important to write, to start from what to show. Okay, and then go ahead. So is this somewhat clear? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Okay, so Okay, so so these are the two basic main things that I want you to kind of always keep in mind of. Okay, one is start from a base case, and two is start from what you want to prove. These are the two very important things to get the induction hypothesis or induction right. Now, the another thing that is there that I want you to know, because as I told you that this particular course has a lot of writing. So of course there is one more assignment that will be uploaded very soon, and this will have very big induction kind of stuff. In this case, I want you to write this following 4 things every time whenever you apply an induction. First thing, induct on what? So for example, I induct on n. So if I have a graph, I induct on the number of edges. I induct on number of vertices. Or I induct on number of cycles in that graph. There's a lot of different things on which you can induct, and it's very important to induct on that. 2, the base case. 3, the induction hypothesis. If the induction hypothesis, what is the induction hypothesis? Meaning we just say that, okay, we assume, so something like induction hypothesis is that for all k less than or equals, or for r, say pk is true. So this can be an induction hypothesis. Okay. So what is it that you are assuming? And second thing, last thing is that inductive step, and this is very important before you prove it. So this is the place where the proof will happen, and we start with what to prove and what. So okay, what to prove. Okay, it is kind of clear that the assumption is, this is the assumption. Induction hypothesis is the assumption, right? So this is the assumption, and this is what you prove. And after you write all of it, then will come the proof. And if you write these 4 things properly, first of all, you will get half the marks straight away, without any question. I will not even look at the proof, I will give you half marks. And more often than not, if you end up writing it this way, you will be able to prove the whole thing also. And if I don't see this stuff, you will lose a lot of marks, possibly the whole marks, because just having a proof hanging around makes nothing, no sense. It is very important to kind of write it very clearly. In induction, most of the time, coming up with the correct things to induct on and correct induction hypothesis is the heart of the whole thing. So these two are the heart of the whole inductive. So my advisor.
Sir, can you repeat for the first point? Induct on what?
Okay, say I give you a graph, right? I tell you that proves that all graphs on n vertices can be written as a union of disjoint cycles. Now there are a lot of parameters over there, right? There are the n vertices is there. There are the number of edges are there. Number of cycles in a graph is there, and so on. Okay, so let me give you this problem. Okay, sorry. Proves that any graph with all three regions can be written Hello. Huh? Hello.
Sir, you are audible.
Yeah. Prove that any graph with all degree event can be written as a union of edge disjoint cycles. Now, this is a proof that I think that will come at some point of time in your assignments. Okay. So, for example, let me just explain you what are these things. Say I have. So, if you remember, so I have a graph like this. You remember the degree? Say,
Yes, 2. Okay.
yeah. Say degree is basically the number of edges. Like this has degree 4, this has degree 2, this also has degree 4, this has degree 4, this has degree 2. So all the degrees are even. So this is what it means by a degree even. All the degrees are even. Now what is a cycle? A cycle is of this form. Say, so this is the three of these three are the cycle. Right? Now, I have told that they are edge disjoint, meaning two cycles cannot share an edge. So I can take an edge cycle like this. These are the two cycles that has a common vertex but not an edge. And it is a union of edge disjoint cycles. That means union meaning, therefore, the last one I will use a maybe a brown color. See, I have written this cycle graph as a union of three cycles. Right? 1, 2, and then 3. And they are all edge disjoint. And their union, meaning they cover the whole, all the edges. And I have assumed that the graphs are all degree, even degree. Okay, now prove this statement. So is this problem clear? Any doubt with this problem?
Yes.
Sorry. So no problem with this thing. Now say if I give you this problem, and if you try to apply induction on this, now here are the graphs, right? And in the graph, there are a lot of things that you can induct on. You can induct on the number of vertices. You can induct on the number of edges. You can induct on the degree of the maximum degree. You can induct on a number of things. So this first thing is, what do you induct on? Are you inducting on number of vertices? Are you inducting on number of edges or what? So in other words, this K, what does this K represent? Hello?
Hello, sir. For the previous problem for AMGM,
number of cycles.
What we will write? Induct on what?
Oh, this will be induct on K or N, right? So this, so see, for here it was kind of natural, right? Where is the thing gone? Yeah, so induct on N. Right. See, till now you have always seen problems where the N was kind of automatically obvious. You have only seen things which are number theoretic like this. But there's only one thing that you can induct on in some sense. And that's why you have never cared about doing it. But when combinatorial objects like graphs and all, there are more than one objects in which you can induct on.
Sir, when we writing the induction hypothesis, then it is quite clear I induct on what.
Maybe you are right, but I suggest that you should still write. It's a good habit to write this induct on what.
Thank you.
Okay, it is. Yes, I understand that. Maybe, I mean, by looking at the rest of the proof, I should be able to make some head and tail of what you are doing. But that doesn't. That is not my job, or anybody's job, right? So induct on what is something that has to be kind of. I would say that you should write it clearly. It's just a one-line thing. Any good proof has it there. Okay, so I have given you this problem. Now, and there are other couple of problems that was there. If you remember, there was the handshake. Yeah.
Sir, another problem. For example, the problem on the graph which you were giving, how it can prove without induction.
Yeah, you can do that. That is not a problem.
So how I think this problem is good for induction approach, and this is not good for induction approach. Is there any way of judgment?
Not okay. This is a hard thing. Yeah, this is something where you will need to do a lot of practice and all. It's like a little bit of experience will kind of help you here. Okay. Not every problem can help in induction. Can be proved by using induction, and you will see a lot of interesting inductive arguments in graph theory, particularly. So yeah, I don't have an easy answer to that. There is no kind of thumb rule as such for which problem induction will work, for which problem what will work. Okay, so that is something that is completely. Usually what happens is that when we try to solve a problem, new problem that we have never seen before, we don't straight away go for induction. We try to play around with it. Try to see, can you reduce something? Can somehow I reduce to a smaller problem or something? Or can something happen? And after some point of time, then the induction, then if we can reduce the problem to a smaller instance or something like that, then yeah, good. So now I think we can induct on something. Okay. And it takes some amount of effort. So you have to do. So that's why I told this in this course, we will learn a lot of theory and techniques and all. At the end of the day, which problem has to be solved by which thing has to be done only by a lot of practice.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, is it possible that by induction we have proved something to be true correctly, but the real statement is not true, it's false?
I mean, not in the kind of problem that you will see. No.
Sir, can we rely on induction everywhere?
Sorry?
Can we rely on induction method?
You can rely on induction for all such kind of problems. At the philosophical level, at the highest level, sometimes some issues are there, particularly at the infinite level. Okay. But I don't think you will be facing this kind of problem unless you start working in the area of logic or something like that.
And sir, also can we use induction in case of finite sets?
Yeah, you can, of course. There's no issue not to use infinite, not infinite sets.
But sir, then it may be possible that that statement is false for some elements, but by induction we are proving it to be true.
Induction is correct, okay, for all things. So although it's an axiom, you will not, as I told you, it's not. If you prove something correctly through induction, it's the correct statement. Okay, so don't even worry about, unless you really take up logic, where you will get into different levels of infiniteness and all those kind of stuff is coming up and all. Other than that, you are completely fine with induction. Any other question?
Sir, I have one doubt regarding these problems in which we have to prove or disprove.
Okay.
So, like, what if we have not encountered such statement before and we don't have any idea whether the statement is true or false?
Right.
Then how to proceed, whether we have to prove or disprove.
Try to prove it and see where you fail. And maybe if you cannot proceed it through a couple of technique approaches, then you should have some reason of why is it failing. And using that part, you should be able to kind of disprove some statement.
So we should first go for proving it.
I mean, that is the general thumb rule. But again, most of the things that you will come up with slowly, I mean, you should have some kind of intuition behind it, where you will see more and more. I mean, with more and more practice, like I will give you some prove and disprove some fact about graphs. Okay, and then you, I mean, some kind of an experience should kind of work for you. Yeah, but in general, see, all these questions are very good questions, but these are kind of the kind of question that I also like. That where, I mean, it's a kind of this. I mean, the best place where I can put myself is when we do our research, right? We don't know. Nobody has told me what to prove. It's not an exercise that somebody says that prove or disprove this, right? Or prove this, right? Every statement is like proof or disprove kind of stuff for us. Maybe it is correct, maybe it is wrong. And if it is correct, we don't even know whether it is correct because of by induction or by contradiction or by something else. We don't even know what approach to take sometimes. I mean, sometimes the approach might be using combinatorics, sometimes the approach might be through topology, sometimes the approach might be through number theory, something completely different. But that's why, I mean, like it's hard to kind of pinpoint it, and that's the fun about it. There are all these techniques, all those methods that we understand very well, but at the end of the day, which one to apply is completely up to us, and by kind of only by practice can we get some idea about it. Yeah, so practice is the only solution. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, just I was thinking about one problem. So just want your views that I am thinking in the right way or not for a graph problem. Like
I mean, maybe
we have the graph problem of
problem. Maybe why don't you write a mail to me there? Okay, instead of doing it in class, I think maybe if we take it offline, this particular discussion. That.
Okay, yes,
hello, sir.
I have that. Means I was thinking about the induction on that complete graph for n into n minus 1 by 2 edges. So I will make.
Oh, right. So I was going to say that one. Maybe that will answer your question. So you have this problem that I have given. The another problem that you should try to solve is the handshake problem.
Okay.
Okay, and you try to solve it. And there is another problem that we had looked at, right? The tournament problem. Try to prove all of them now, one by one. Okay, we will do them. We will do them in class also. So, but I want you by next class to think about these three problems and come. Before next class, I will be uploading the this slides for 7A and 7B, and I want you guys to think about these three problems. Yeah. Somebody else?
Sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I have a doubt that there is a question that prove that there are infinite primes of the type 4k plus 1 and 4k plus 3, sir.
Right.
And sir, sir, in the type of 4k plus 1, I have taken let us assume that there are P1 P2 dot pk primes of the type 4k plus 1, sir.
Right.
And I have taken a number that n is equal to 4 into p1 dot p2 dot pk plus 1, sir.
Right.
This is the number I have chosen, sir. And sir, if we use the if I try to divide the p1 divide the n by p1 p2 then it doesn't divide, sir. So we can say that n is a number which is greater than pk, and we say that n is also a prime because it is not divisible by any prime previous than it, sir. So we prove that and there is an infinite primes of 4k plus 1 type, sir. Right, sir?
No, this is not true. Your argument is wrong. Why? See, you start with primes of 4k plus 1, so p1 to p something, t. Then you take the product of them and take plus 1, 2, whatever, doesn't matter, right?
Yes, sir.
And you can prove that this number n is not divisible by this p1 to pt.
Yes, sir.
But who told you that it is not divisible by some other prime which is of form 4k plus 3?
Okay, so then how do we proceed for that
So
question?
think about it. Okay, so maybe I'll ask my TS to kind of conduct a class over there. 4k plus 1, by the way, is a very hard question. It's a very hard question. But 4k plus 3 is a slightly easier question. Okay, so why? Because 4k plus 3, a number 4k plus 3 must be divisible by at least one prime of the form 4k plus 3. Okay, use this fact and try to prove that there are infinitely number of primes of the form 4k plus 3.
Okay, sir.
Okay, for 4k plus 1, it is much more complicated. And yeah, so I don't know how, if any of you have solved it, then you can ask your friends or we can do it later on. But that's a very hard question, much more harder question than the 4k plus 3. Okay.
Sir, one question in the slide 6A.
6A.
6A, page 2.
6A, page 2. Yeah. Page 2, this one.
Yeah, this one regarding the last 2 points.
Yeah.
Say we have the statement A implies B. Now to give a counter example, I give one instance of A that doesn't imply B. Means B is false for that.
Yes.
So what is this also an existential proof? Means what is the
What is
difference?
existential proof? I will talk about it later on.
Okay.
None of these are existential proofs.
Okay.
Okay, I will talk about existential proof later on.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not even touched existential proof in this till now. And existential proof are something very important and very nice, and I will do it possibly in a couple of weeks' time. I'll give you one example.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, but the thing that she was saying, like if we want to prove it for all the instances, and if we disprove it just for single instance, so why it's not existential? Like
No. I mean, this might be existential. You can talk about, but there is something called existential proof, and I'll talk about it later. Okay, so.
Okay, means it will be called proof by counter.
It will be called proof by counterexample. Existential proof is something else. Existential proof is basically when I told prove you something without actually proving it. Okay. I mean, I know that it is a bit confusing, but I will talk about it later on. Yeah. So don't. In fact, yeah, there's something called a probabilistic proof or existential proof. Both of them are kind of that form. Maybe I can just tell you actually. This is, you really want to do it. Here is it. Here is the problem. Okay, you can think of this problem. You know what is the bipartite graph? You know what is the bipartite graph? You have the sets A and B, and you have this vertices here, and all the edges are from A to B and so on. Okay, this is called a bipartite graph. I think we had a discussion on this one at some point of time. Okay, the problem is that if G is a graph on n vertices and m edges, prove that, if some of you don't follow this statement, that's perfectly fine, because I have not even gone that much. Prove that G has a bipartite subgraph on bipartite subgraph on n vertices and more than or equal to m over 2 edges. Okay, so basically, given a graph, I can throw away less than half the number of edges and make it bipartite. This is what it says. Now try to prove it. Okay, there are multiple ways of proving it, and there is one particular way of proving it in which I will not show you a bipartite graph. I will not produce you the bipartite graph. The natural proof is that, oh, given a graph, let me massage it in some way, and then here is the bipartite subgraph. But there is another way of proving it in which I will prove it to you, this sentence, this statement, but at no point of time I will produce you the bipartite subgraph. Which means that, so this kind of proof we will call as the existential proof. I prove you that there is something that exists, but I don't produce you that exact object. Okay, so that is what is called an existential proof.
Okay, it's like proving the probability is more than 0.
Okay, good. You have understood more than what I wanted to say. Yeah. Yeah.
So, sir, what is the m here? This is the number of edges.
Number of edges. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, Luna, whatever you told was correct. But yeah, you can now try to prove it yourself.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, there is a question in the 6A lecture, slide 6A, sir, on 45 page number.
Where am I? 6A, 45 page number, okay.
Yes,
yeah.
Sir, in this case, we have taken the counter positive of this statement, and sir, so sir, there is the counter positive statement of that this, sir, if n is a positive integer such that and n is a square of an integer, then n cannot be equal to 2 mod 3, sir. Right? Sir, this is a counter positive statement of this that is given in the
Yes.
50th slide, sir.
Yes.
So, sir, sir, this is so I have taken that n is equal to k square because n is a square that we have taken,
Right.
and k square does not equal to 2 mod 3, sir.
Right.
Sir, and this is the question just like we have solved in the 5A, that a square minus 2 cannot be equal to 4b, I think, sir.
Exactly.
And sir, then we have to taken all the 3 cases, right, sir?
You have to take all these 3 cases, yes.
And so we can proceed like that, sir. Okay. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so if you don't have any other question, then I can stop here today for today's class. I will upload you this slide, the slides for today's reading and notes. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me.
Sir, I have proved one question like p. The p is a prime, and p greater than 5. P square minus 1 is divisible by 6.
Right.
by using that cases for all the reminders.
Right.
Can you give me any other process, just a process like you can also do by that, or like, is there any other way?
I mean, there are some ways, but this is the most easy way. I mean, there are some techniques ways that are there. I mean, I think you can do it through some other number theory results, Fermat's little theorem and all those kind of stuff. But this is the most beautiful proof for this problem. Yeah, the most elegant. Okay, good. So, okay, so then let me stop today. We had a long class. So we will meet again on Thursday, Friday, right? Right, on the 1st. Good. So I'll meet on the 1st. So, and we will possibly upload you another assignment sometime in the next 2-3 days. I will let you know when we upload it. So is any of the TAs here? Show me, are you there? I think Shomi is there. Shomi, can you just note down that we have to give a assignment?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay.